Welcome back to another episode of the Risk Factor podcast. I'm your host, Risk Dreams. We finally have a guest on. We have Pescaro. If you want to say what's up.
Yeah, what's up? Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. Pescaro is like an analyst, a journalist in the scene. I think I lost your camera.
Yep, I'm bringing it right back. My bad.
And no, you're good. So I want to bring him on, and we are just finishing up with the qualifying matches for stage 4, right? We're in stage 4 right now.
Yep.
So that is a wrap. The tournament starts on Thursday, so just in 2 days or in 1 day, depending on when you're watching this. It starts Thursday, so we know all the seedings, we know the bracket, and let me switch this over.
All right, I think I'm back, video-wise.
All right, cool. There we go. I got you back.
Wait.
So yeah, we're gonna do kind of the same setup as we normally do on the podcast. So we'll review these matches from last week. There was 10 matches as normal. We'll kind of go through them, and then what we'll do is we're bringing Risk Championship Pie back, and I finally have a guest to kind of comment and give their feedback on it, and we can go back and forth on that, and then we'll do a bracket prediction for the major. It's in Columbus, and then we got 2 kind of like fun little segments at the end. But yeah, so why don't you, kind of tell me a little bit more about yourself, Pescaro? I know we were just talking a little bit. You said you're from Mass originally, right?
Yeah, family grew up in Massachusetts. We moved down here to North Carolina in 2008. I've literally been playing Call of Duty since I moved down here. It started with World at War Zombies, which scared the crap out of me.
Yes.
And like for the longest time, I was like, Zombies was my favorite part of COD. I wasn't even like a big multiplayer guy, but I definitely started like tuning into competitive when like Nade Shot and Scump were really popping off, and I would say I was an Optic fanboy for a little bit there. Who wasn't? I feel like that's how almost everyone got into the scene, was being an Optic fan. And I really started to get into like being involved with the community and stuff around, I would say Cold War was the game that like I started, because MW19 I only really caught the very end of that year, and watched like champs and stuff, and then Cold War on I watched like all the way through every match, every major, all that stuff. But it really wasn't until like December, at the start of this game, at the start of MW2, where I really tried to like not just be a fan. I tried to be more than that. I wanted to bring my journalistic background and just my personality and everything into the Call of Duty scene. And I do YouTube, I do streaming, I do all that, but I also, Twitter is probably one of my most active accounts, where I do all sorts of stuff. I write for Breaking Point, and then I'm also a content creator for a brand new org, TGE, or The Greatest Ever. But a lot of my content on like Twitter especially, it very much revolves around the CDL. I'm either offering my opinion on other people's posts, or doing these deep dives into certain players who have been having a big impact as of late on their teams. Or I was even doing like Guess Who content for a while. That I think is what initially kind of got my name out there in a sense.
Yeah, those are fun.
And I've just been kind of building off of that, and really trying to carve out my space within the scene. But like I was telling you before I hopped on, I mean, doing things like this, it's kind of my bread and butter. I love interacting with other people, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you hopped in. It sounded like we kind of had a similar introduction to Call of Duty. You said you started watching competitive in Cold War, or that's when?
I would say that's when I started watching it, where like I was tuning into
most matches. Yeah.
Yeah, like I watched it on and off. I mean,
probably
since Black Ops 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Like I would tune into some of those matches, and that's also when I first started like thinking I myself was gonna go pro, like playing GBs and all that. Even though I wasn't old enough at the time, anyways. I think the first game I would have been able to go, pro in if I was actually that good would have been World War II, and I was not a fan of that game at all.
I hated that game. That was like the first. That was like the first COD that I didn't play.
For me, it was Infinite Warfare. Like
Really?
I'll tell you what, I really only bought that game because I bought the $80 version to play COD 4 Remastered.
Yeah, I didn't mind Infinite Warfare, but I played a lot of COD 4 Remastered as well. That was probably actually like my best COD, MWR, like S&Ds and stuff. Wager matches and money eights and stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, that's kind of like the same boat that I'm in too. Just trying to, you got more of like a journalist background. I'm trying to do a little bit more like obviously the videos and podcasts and whatnot. But we kind of got a similar direction. And I mean, you definitely recently have been getting a lot of interactions with your posts and stuff, which is good. I didn't know that you wrote for Breaking Point. Is that new?
I've been covering, so I had reached out to them right before Major 1 because that was in Raleigh, which where I'm at.
You
which,
went?
By the way, was like I went to that because that's literally 10 minutes down the street from me. So that was my first ever LAN event, which was a massive surprise. I mean, I was at work when they were announcing like the MW2 season, and when it showed Major 1 being in Raleigh, like I almost like jumped out of my seat. I was like, what the hell? Because like we don't have a team or anything, so I was surprised. But we've been hosting like Halo and Rainbow Six and some other esports, so it's been cool that our state or city or whatever has really kind of embraced esports events.
Yeah.
I reached out to them right before that. I had just been kind of freelance, writing articles and stuff, power rankings, all that kind of stuff, and I basically was just like, I literally DM'd the Breaking Point Twitter. I had no idea who was running it, but I DM'd them, and I was just like, look, like, here's some of the work that I've been doing. I have a journalism background. I'd really like to work with you guys. And it really started there, like, from after Major 1 on, I've been writing. I've got a few articles of my own that are on their website. I've done the past 2 weeks. We've put out, as you can see on the screen, we put out those power ranking articles where myself and two of the other writers, we each took like 4 teams that we covered. So like in the case of this one for Optic, that I had them this week. So we were putting the power rankings, but then also like who we felt was the X factor for each team.
I see. Okay. So, all right. Yeah, that's cool.
So we were trading off on those. But yeah, so I've been writing with them mainly since post Major 1. And that's been a really cool experience because, I mean, obviously they've got a good stable of people.
Yeah, of course.
Tactical Rab and Prone, Lion Man. They've got some cool guys over there. So
my first ever event was just Major 2 in Boston, or 3, or was it 2 or 3?
It was 2.
It was 2. Yeah, 3 was.
I was gonna
Texas.
go to that.
Yeah, that was my first ever one, and like I've been watching for ever since like Black Ops 2. So, but there's never same boat. There was never an event in Boston. Though the closest one was always New York, and that not always. The first New York one was last year, so there was never really any COD events closed. So once the Boston team got announced, I was super hyped just to have kind of like a hometown team, but then also to see how like the Breach has like been really involved. So they had the Challengers event last year, and they didn't even have like a major. They just threw the Challengers event just cause. So that was really cool.
Yep.
So to see like the major this year, it was like the best weekend ever. So I saw Tactical Rab. He is a tall man. So I think we're good to jump into the review for last week matches. So we'll kind of just go one by one. We'll give our thoughts here. So the first match was of the weekend. This was on Friday. So 3 matches on Friday was Ultra versus Legion. This is a match that I originally thought Ultra was going to win, but then I had switched my prediction to Legion, kind of based off of like the previous week, seeing what Standy was doing, and honestly what TJ was doing, because he was really impressive in that match against, I think it was Boston, where they won that Fortress Hardpoint, and TJ like went crazy in that last hill.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so
I think him and both Standy, it was like their first match together. They both dropped like 30 bombs or something like that. Like it was
it was fun.
match.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, and I mean, both of us being kind of longtime fans, obviously. Clayser and Temping on this team is super fun. TJ is honestly kind of actually TJ too. He's pretty much been around almost as long as the rest of these guys. So and then obviously there was the drama between Scrappy and Standy. This is the old team of Standys. So this one went 5. You can kind of see here who did well, who didn't do well as far as KD goes. Standy having a huge match. I wanted him in my fantasy team, but I made my fantasy team before they picked him up, so I was kind of upset about that. I was like, damn, I could have had him. Everyone has him because he was $5, so it just made so much sense. But I wasn't gonna pick up Too Real, so I think I have Temp, Hixie, Celium, and Andraza.
I was gonna say, well, I think we have the same team.
Oh yeah, we do. I saw that as well.
God,
yeah, it's not
really
doing so well.
I thought the Hixie pick would be decent, and
I thought he was a sleeper.
This series has been pretty much the equivalent of all of his performances in Stage 4. I mean, he played really well at the major.
Yeah, he did.
In the grand final, especially, like. He wasn't just being like the objective guy. Like he was actually making plays and stuff.
Yeah, he was really impactful.
And slaying out. But I don't know if it's just they got ahead of themselves and thought they could, take their foot off the gas or what. But I mean, this did go 5 in fairness, but finishing the stage 1 and 4 after winning the major, clearly they took a big step backwards.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of like. What we're gonna expect from Vegas going against a good Respawn team. So they win games 2, 3, and 4. Not so much expecting them to win a control. This game here was to tie or overtake the longest control loss streak in CDL. And to go up against the number 1 control team, I thought they were for sure losing. But maybe because Expo's so new, neither team necessarily mastered it. And Vegas was able to squeak it out. So in order for Vegas to like continue this run, this is definitely going to be like their formula. They're going to have to win both searches and steal a hard point or a control. And that's exactly what they did. And I think that's what makes them scary, is because if it goes to that game 5, it's like you kind of have to favor Vegas. So that's what I think that's like the difference between being good at search and destroy versus hard point. I saw a statistic go out saying when the series is tied 1-1, the team that wins search and destroy wins 65% of the time. So even though the series is tied, whoever won the second game is like in good shape, because whoever won the first game just threw their lead away. So
right.
I mean, being a search team, they say search wins championships, and this was close. I mean, like 1 round in the search and destroy game 5, 1 round in the control. And then Toronto honestly did pretty well. They won by a decent margin in the hard points. So, and this was kind of the story for like most of their losses. So I don't think we can necessarily count them out, but them starting in losers is unfortunate. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, just the fact that they're gonna either play Boston or Optic in losers round 1.
Yeah.
Off of a tough loss. Like,
and
either one of those teams, like Boston, I don't know if they've beat them this year or not. They might have, but I know most of those matches. There we go. I was gonna say most of those matches have gone 5 maps.
Week 1, yeah, they beat them.
Boston and Toronto. So, that's probably one where if Boston loses to Optic, I would expect a map 5. If Optic somehow loses to Boston, I don't know. I mean, that could be.
It gets dicey if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how Optic would regain mentally from being considered
the best,
the favorite, to then being knocked down to losers, because they just did it in Major 3.
Yeah, sure.
They weren't considered the favorite going into it necessarily, but they were at home
Yeah.
They had a pretty good stage.
Yeah, they were a better
and
team.
Got knocked to losers round 1 and then made that run, but I don't know how they'd respond this time around.
Yeah, that would be heartbreaking if they lose round
I just
1.
think the one thing I wanted to point out on that Ultra in Vegas, aside from the fact that we almost had a horrendous meltdown on the Search and Destroy, where Vegas was up 5-1, Standy shot bodies, and
Yeah,
then
that's
Toronto
true.
came all the way back and pushed it around. Like, my heart was,
It,
because
it,
I felt pretty bold making that pick, like saying that Vegas was gonna win. And I was like, oh, I look really smart now. And then they almost choked it. I was just like, oh my god.
I know. We seem to have a lot of similar picks, and like I even like took a
Yeah.
look at your bracket, and like it's really similar. We have like one or I think like one match difference, so we seem to have similar takes. But so far it's working. I mean, we went what 9 for 10, or
Yep,
I went
think
10 for 10.
yeah.
You went 9 for 10, so it's like
Yep.
whatever we're doing is working. So
Right.
I'm
And
gonna
then
just keep it going.
Toronto, like I was gonna say one more thing about this one, and then we can move on. Toronto here, I'm pretty sure Vegas has like not won LSILO control this year, or like they maybe have like one win. They're very bad at it, is my point.
Yeah,
And Toronto, I'm pretty sure they were the ones who vetoed it and allowed Expo to get through instead. So I just like knowing a team is bad at the mode, and especially at a particular map. Why would you do them any favors by giving them the map that has the biggest amount of question marks around it? Like,
yeah.
to me, they almost like out vetoed themselves in this matchup, and they needed to win to give themselves any sort of chance at winners bracket. So I don't know if that's coaching or what, but that was a weird decision in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's kind of similar to what happened last year with Optic and like some of the control maps, where it's like they were just challenging like maps that weren't necessarily their best for like whatever reason, because Vegas have been the worst control team this entire year. So obviously Expo being so new, it's like more of an even playing field, and Ultra have
Right.
been the best. So like if you just ban Expo, it doesn't even matter what other map Vegas bans, because they're gonna be better
Yeah.
on it. And I mean that could have been the reason why they're not in winners, because if they won this series, obviously there would have been a tiebreaker depending on map counts. But I'm assuming with all these game 5 losses, they would have been safe and in winners. So
Most likely,
that's a
yeah.
good point about the control. Toronto kind of trolled there, and
Yeah.
then yeah, like you mentioned, this was almost a breakdown. And then round 11, it was like a crazy play call. Temp pulls out the streak, forces the guys in kitchen out to the back, and Standy and I think TJ kind of ran through the middle of the map for free and got behind them. It was really close,
Yep.
man. That was hard. That was like I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, okay, clean over. And then next thing you know, they just kind of start to climb back. So
Yeah, no, it was definitely like better maps and ones that you could like pull more from than like any of the other ones. I mean, like this one for example, we're not gonna have like I'm not gonna at least have a whole lot to say about it.
me neither. It was a close series given like the matchup. The 3-0 is kind of what I think most people expected. But
Yeah.
you can see here how close the hard point was. Wasn't necessarily that close, but then the search and destroy came down to around 11, where Hook again has been just probably the best S&D player right now.
Dude, yeah, he has hit a different level of play on S&D. It's insane that he's consistently dropping the most kills and having the least amount of deaths as an SMG player. Like it's crazy to me. Super impressive.
Yeah, he'll entry a lot, and like he'll find a way to get the kill and stay alive without being traded. So his impact in search has been phenomenal. So to see this go to round 11, honestly,
Right.
this is probably the map I would give Gorillas like the closest chance, just because search and destroy
agree.
isn't necessarily as easy to be consistent in. But
Right.
Hook and Shotzi kind of do their thing,
Yeah.
and they pulled it out in the end. And then Control, kind of a similar situation. Wasn't this
It was
A reverse sweep,
2-0.
right?
Yeah, it was a reverse sweep from Optic, which
Yeah.
again just goes to show the evolution of that team in general. Because if you go back, at certain parts last year or like at all during Cold War,
They had no ice, man.
Optic goes down 2-0. They're losing it 3-0, 3-1. They're not pushing it. They're not pushing it to that round five. And even if they did, it's rare that they were winning it. Like,
Yeah.
and I know, like, don't get me wrong, Gorillas are clearly the inferior team in this situation. They're already down 2-0 in the series, but like that right there is a chance where you're up 2-0. You're likely, I'm assuming they had defense for round five, if I remember correctly. Um, and not being able to pull out that map, like it just, I don't know. It was crazy that those last two maps were so neck and neck, but in the end, I mean, the better team came out on top. I think that's really the way to look at this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I feel bad for the LAG guys. Their organization is closing/closed, so they're just finishing this year out. They're not making any roster changes. They probably aren't even allowed to with the way that their org is set up. I feel bad for honestly a lot of the guys on this squad because at the beginning of the year, I kind of thought LAG was like an okay team.
I
Like
did
I didn't
too.
think they were necessarily free, but now at this point, I feel like they're kind of free. And that probably comes part with their situation. Like there
Oh yeah,
probably is like changes that they wanted to make, and obviously RCD's has been like very very like underperforming compared to what we see. But how much of that can
yeah,
like you weigh to like his skill personally versus his situation? Because we saw the exact same thing with Hook. He was on
yeah.
LAG
No,
and he was pretty bad, honestly. And then
yeah.
you switch his environment, and then he starts to shine. And honestly, whether like RCD stays on this squad or if he gets pushed to an or gets traded or joins a new squad, I feel like with a different cast around him, he'll be back to his like normal self going into next
100%.
year. And and then obviously you got this whole LAG year was kind of unfortunate. They signed 3-year deals with Spar and they had Hook and Neptune, and then that all got chalked up. So RC's probably wasn't even expecting to be playing with any of these guys. So
Yeah.
not that they're
Well,
bad, because they honestly have been
no,
pretty
it's
good,
not that they're
but
bad at all. Especially, I think Joe Deceives. It's not that he's not necessarily having the same success as a rookie as like Beans or Ghosty or some of these other guys, but he's definitely had moments where you're like, okay, I can see why he got called up. Like he's a
yeah,
solid player. And I think exactly what you said. Like the fact that their entire organization in general is just chalked. Uh, I don't like they have nothing to compete for essentially because let's say they just all of a sudden flip the switch and miraculously go on this insane run and win champs like then it's not going to say it like they're all going to get released at the end of the year anyways.
yeah,
They already have such a big hole they'd have to I don't even like they might even be mathematically eliminated at this point. I don't know. But I mean and like you said with Arcides, he you know personally, I think the team was stupid to keep him after they decided to elevate those three guys because not because he's underperforming, but that LAG Academy team that won the Challengers Open in Raleigh
mm-hmm.
at Major One, you should have just brought them all up.
I
Like,
know you already brought
because
3 of them.
if you knew all this stuff was going down behind the scenes, you could have offloaded Arcidy's salary because, as we heard or suspected at the time, Optic was looking to bring him back, but couldn't get a deal done. I guess because of LAG not wanting to, which ended up working out in their favor. They ended up signing Hook, not having to do any sort of trading, and it's been a great move for them. But
Mm-hmm.
point being, like, I just think Arcidy's these three guys he just has no chemistry with. Like every team he's ever been on before this, those United squads, that Phase squad, even the Huntsman team that he played with, like it seemed like he had really good chemistry with those guys. And I'm not trying to like insinuate that he doesn't like them or whatever, but like it just seems like there's no like team like vibe between him and the other three on his team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I feel bad for them, because it's just like their environment, their whole situation is kind of chalked. So I feel like going into next year, I think we'll see some of these guys in the league still. I think Assault's been having a pretty decent year. I mean, last stage he had a top 10 KD, even though his team
Yeah.
didn't do very well.
No, he's been great. I mean, he's really obviously he was in the league, then he got sent down to challengers for like a year and a half. I think he's showing that he's worthy of having a league spot. I think he's playing pretty solid AR.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, especially considering, it's like he's not getting a ton of help, so to speak, from varsity. So it's like, I think he's having a good year, all things considered.
yeah, it's just a situation, man. But I mean, I think most people predicted 3-0, 3-1, and that's exactly what we got. We'll kind of go through these ones a little bit quicker, just so
Yeah.
we stay on time. But this one was surprising. This was kind of Rocker has not looked good at all. They get the first two wins of the stage on LAN. Obviously, a little bit of controversy there. I kind of thought that FaZe was going to win this like 3-0, honestly.
Yeah.
So for this to go 5 and it's another round 11, it was super surprising to me. And I mean, you can kind of see here like how bad that Rocker got destroyed in game 1. 100-point clubbed. FaZe goes up 2-0. And then, I mean, to be fair, these were extremely close losses that FaZe took. And then game 5, they come out, they win 6-5. And I mean, if you just look at the kill differential, it's like a lot. It's a 35 kill differential for them to win by one search and destroy round. So I think that kind of speaks to the struggles that FaZe are having. Even like when they're winning, it's not pretty. Like against a team like Rocker, like they heavily outslayed them and they still barely just won. Abizi to me looks like the MVP, and I feel like he's pretty much been a top 2, top 1 player like all year long. Yeah. So it's kind of strange seeing this FaZe team, not be dominant. They're still a pretty good team, but like they're definitely not what they used to be. So yeah,
I was gonna say you're about to be hovering over the reason why. I hate to say it, but
yeah,
and this has nothing to do with, like, I'm not just being simple and being like, oh, his KD's not great. Like, it's not that at all. Like, just even look at the damage differential.
Mm-hmm.
The other 3 guys, 12K, nearly 13, 10K, you could round up to 11, and then the other one 11K, and he's at 8K. Like, clearly he's not being, and that's in a 5 map. That's the whole series. That's not like a couple maps or whatever. Like, clearly he's not being involved as much as the other guys at all. Like, even in a match where they're slamming him like that one, like, obviously Abizi took over.
Yeah.
No one else really had to do a whole lot. But, like, 11 kills in that and only 1,300 damage. Like, I don't know if it's positioning. I don't know if that's just how they want him to play. Like, that's how they've set him up. But I just think, obviously, he's not gelling with those 3 as much as Arcides did. Hence why you're not seeing so much of the domination that we're also accustomed to from Atlanta FaZe. But yeah, I went from, like, when they went up 2-0, I was like, okay, FaZe is back. They're top of the league again. They're gonna slam them, and then friggin' Rocker almost takes it, and I was just like, FaZe got to get their shit together. Like,
yeah,
they are just not, like, if they're doing this against Rocker, they can't. There's just no expectation for them to be able to consistently beat, the Thieves, the Surge, the the Optic. I mean, if you're struggling like this against a team that is mid to low tier at best.
Yeah, I mean, I would have them like near the bottom at this point. Especially coming off of last stage. So yeah, I mean, you really hit it on the nail, hit the nail on the hammer, or the hammer on the nail, whatever. Yeah, Slasher, it's not necessarily the KD. It seems like every time we're spectating him, the important kills on the rotation aren't going his way. The important lane holds on on hardpoint aren't going his way. In the control, he almost seems like not there at times. And last stage, I think he had like a very strong search. Well, he had a very strong search and destroy. So I think that kind of like made up for it, where now it's kind of like settled back down. So it's not necessarily evening out the way that he can be, because you do have two search and destroy. So at the very least, if you're at least good at search and destroy, like really good at search, that will help out, and that hasn't been the case. So his respawns have been super lackluster, and then his search and destroys have been like average. So you take
Yeah.
all that into consideration, and it's not a good mix. And yeah, you also mentioned them getting rid of Arcides and picking up Slasher. I thought it was a strange move to begin with, to be honest. I think it's the first player trade that we've ever seen in the league. Um,
Well, actually,
I'm not sure
I
if it was a
mean,
trade or if they're both free
yeah.
agents and just switched, but
Technically, it was like they were both free agents
and they
just
switched.
We still haven't technically had our first trade.
Yeah, and I don't
But
know if we
I
like
mean,
ever
it
will.
essentially was
Yeah,
a trade, if you will.
I wasn't sure if they're free
And
agents or not, but it was
it
just
has
weird.
not worked out for either team, in my opinion, at
Yeah,
all.
I
'Cause
agree.
Arcides, like we said, isn't really gelling over there with LEG. Slasher clearly is not the right fit with FaZe. I mean, they did win a major, so it's like it's not a horrible fit by any means, but I think he's part of the reason why they're not like consistently at the top like they've been the past couple seasons.
Yep. And FaZe obviously want to do more than win just one major. So yeah, they
Right.
won a major, but you're still right. It's not working for their what they're looking for. So
Yep.
we'll see what happens. We've seen them be good with this team, so maybe they can bring it back. But as of now, it's not looking too good. And we'll see if they make a change or not. It's pretty late into the season, so I don't think so.
I
But
doubt
we'll
it.
we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. Um, then we'll move on to this match. This one was kind of a a blowout, honestly. Um, New York has been looking pretty good, honestly. The past two majors have not gone very well for them, where Ravens the whole year hasn't gone well for them, and they started to look kind of the worst version of themselves that they've ever been. So I kind of thought Subliners would win this 3-1. That's exactly what happened. Kismet has been really impressive to me. Skies has been kind of back to that form where we saw him on Florida, like being able to
Yeah.
kind of take over. So it didn't surprise me that this team was able to win Major One. It did surprise me how far they fell off, but they're definitely bringing it back, and they're looking like a top team, not
Yeah.
like a mid to a top team. They're
I
definitely
think
not at the bottom like they used to be, but
I think the thing with them is their floor and their ceiling.
you're good.
Okay. Sorry. Their floor and their ceiling clearly align with the performance of Priesta. We know what we're getting out of Hydra, Kismet, Skies. Like they all kind of have performed consistently to what we expect. Priesta started the year very well, maybe his like best form of his career,
Mm-hmm.
and now he's kind of fallen back into the average at best play that we had gotten used to over the past couple seasons, and I think that's a big reason why NYSL went from winning Major One and being like far and away one of the best teams in the league to now just being uh, they're better than average, but they're not top three or anything like that. They're not even in the discussion for top three, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But for them to go from 12th to 8th or from 8th to 12th, they're definitely better than that now. And you're right, Priestley is their X factor. If he can like be, you know, like even if he can be average, I mean, Hydra is like a world class player.
Right.
Kismet and Skies have shown us that they're able to be like all star caliber players at times. So as long as Priest is doing his role,
I mean,
they can be
you just
scary.
get like a .85 out of him, and
Yeah,
if he's contributing to the like, he doesn't have to necessarily slay out. Like that's not it. Like if he's getting like a .8 or just not dying as much, and then playing the objective as well, or making sure the rotations are going right or whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. He doesn't have to go. Like, I'm not trying to imply that he has to go positive or have these like takeover maps by any means, but I mean, you look at even this hard point on Embassy that they won sizably, 250 to 131. I'm pretty sure I saw his stat line was like a point 0.5, 0.48 or something like that. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
wasn't pretty at
they
all.
like they're winning in spite of him. When the year started, they were winning. They were going very far, probably because of him in many ways. But
Yeah.
now it's like when they do win, it's kind of like the other three are having a good series, and he's just kind of being dragged along.
Yeah, I agree. And then this Ravens team has been kind of, they make constant roster moves and none of them seem to improve. This last one, I honestly think, made them worse. So they're pretty much out of contention. At least
Yeah.
you know, they're playing for their careers really at this point. I think players like Nasty and Asim are probably like safe going into next year, but players like Scrap, especially Yuli, who has been like not good at all to be honest, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the only Yuli that we've seen. So he'll definitely have to turn it around. And Scraps has been pretty hit or miss. So
Yes,
his
I was gonna say he has definitely been like hit or miss. I think that's the best way to describe Scraps.
mm-hmm,
Nasty, I feel bad for because I feel like he
he's been
has
pretty
just
good.
he's been considering how bad of a team they are. He
Yeah,
has been very good, and he was really solid last year too
yeah, he
when they were
was.
a better team. Um, I think like he definitely should still like they should build around him personally. I think you going into this off season, you cut everyone else loose if as long as they're not still signed to a contract,
Mm-hmm.
and you build around Nasty because he is a good player that I think you put some more talent around him, they can be a competitive team. And Yuli, it's tough for him because he kind of made the same mistake that a player that Decimate made. I think it was during Cold War, where he was in Challengers, he was performing well in Challengers, and then one of those lower teams, I think it was Seattle or something like that, like needed a player, and you go up, you're playing with a bad team, you're playing bad, and like now you're struggling to get back into the league because all they've seen you do in the league is perform badly.
Yeah, that happened to like 4 players on Vegas last year,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah, it's like it's a roll of the dice. I mean, obviously it's the pros. You want to get called up, you want to play in the on the main stage and all that, but if it's with a team if you're joining a sinking ship and you aren't about to like completely turn around their season, it's hard to see the worth in it or the value in it.
yeah, exactly. And that's the problem too, because you never know. Like maybe it will work, but it's likely it won't. But you never know if you get another
Yeah.
offer. So I mean, it's probably a tough decision. I mean, it's definitely a tough decision for them.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just the way that it works. Um, Florida versus Vegas. Florida's also like a bottom 4 team right now. Honestly, at this point, they might be like the worst team. I might have a little bit more open London than I do Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we see Vic will come in for Havoc. He had like a family issue going on or a personal, situation that he had to take care of. So he unexpectedly left the team to our understanding. So that was probably, you know, detrimental to the whole squad completely because they
He was their
just
vet. I
made.
mean, he's the only guy that's been there consistently. I mean, he wasn't there during Vanguard, but he was there during Cold War, and he was
Yeah.
there from the start from this year. Um, and I hope. Okay, that sounds bad. I don't hope that there's anything actually going on with like. I don't hope anything bad is actually happening, but like I also hope that that wasn't just an excuse and that they actually benched him because of performance because he has not been the problem for this team.
Yeah. I don't think that's the
And
scenario because he's been good, like you
right,
said.
no, I think genuinely there was something going on behind the
Yeah.
scenes, and it was just an unexpected, unfortunate situation. But I just feel like this team has made way too many random roster changes, and like you go back to Major 1, they had that insane, like they knocked off Optic, and they looked like a fairly decent team. They've just been playing like they've just been shuffling their roster all year. So it's like you're like something I hammer home whenever I do like my analytical posts and stuff is like, it's not all stats. Like something that plays a big role in team success is chemistry. And
Yeah.
and this isn't to say that Capsidal, Vikal, Fellow, and Brack like aren't good players, but when you're just throwing a random squad of 4 together, like against teams that have chemistry or are like have veterans like Vegas does, you're just like you're already basically putting yourself at a massive disadvantage before the match even starts.
I mean, you look at teams who have had like a core for a long time. I mean, FaZe has seen success in pretty much every season. Optic not necessarily have like stayed together for like the past few years, like with the recent changes that they've had, picking up Hook and Ghosty, but Dashy and Shotzi,
Right.
they've had success. They've still been like a pretty like stuck together team compared to some of these other teams like Florida and like Vegas and stuff.
And even the moves that Optic made, like you said, with bringing like Hook back and stuff. Hook had a lot of chemistry with Shotzi prior to this, so it's like it's not like they brought in like Ghosty.
Yeah, that's
was
true.
The one guy they brought in that like there was no prior, you had no idea what to expect out of it. But like Hook, there was a history there, and then Shotzi and Dashy obviously played together last year. The moves are a lot more calculated versus Florida at times. I mean, it literally looks like they just put up a bunch of random names on sticky notes on the wall, close their eyes, and throw darts, and like, all right, we're signing Fellow. Not that he had, like, I'm not trying to say he wasn't playing good in challengers and didn't deserve it, but like just from a roster building standpoint, and chemistry standpoints, a lot of these moves have not made sense.
Yeah, and then you see teams like Thieves stick it out for a long time, and they have success. Like last year, obviously they had ultimate success. This year, it seems like they're getting back to that success. You see, there was one more team, Seattle. Obviously, last year they were able to win a major. They were able to do. They looked like a pretty good team throughout the year. Obviously, they had some bad placings, but they still looked good going into the tournaments. And now this year, they stuck it out. They're looking like a really good team again. So I mean it seems like
second at the first major.
Yep, second. And now, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they get like top 4, 3 here in this major with the way that things are like coming down to it. So I mean, you can kind of just see when the team sticks together. You may not see immediate success, but it seems like eventually there will be that. I mean, Brack like literally got dropped and then picked back up a few weeks later. They picked up Capsidal, Fellow, Vikal was out, back in. Obviously a little bit different because like he was forced in. But
Major Maniac was there at the beginning of the year, then he was out.
Yep.
And it was the weirdest thing because Florida started the year as one of the better S&D teams. A lot of people would say because you have a guy like Major Maniac on your team. I mean, he has consistently been known to make his teams solid S&D. You go and drop him, and I don't know what their S&D is on the year, but I would be shocked if since he dropped that it was any better or even close to being the same.
Yeah. And you can see here that the series was kind of close, but Vegas was able to ice up in pretty much all the game modes. Even this Mercado, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering, Florida had like a decent lead, and I think Vegas kind of started to bring it back towards the end. So, I mean, that's kind of just the difference between a team that has some time together. Obviously, TJ, Temp, and Glacier have been together all year versus a team like Florida who has had like 5 different rosters, and they are pretty much out of contention. So at this point, that's going to be uneasy for a lot of players, knowing that they're not going to make champs, knowing that their team isn't great. Obviously, they're not immune to knowing how well their team is versus others. So, and we're going to see that with this upcoming major, how some teams are just going to fall flat that have already been falling flat. We got 5 more to go through. We'll try and make this quick here. Especially with some of the more interesting ones, which I would say this one is one of the more interesting ones. Optic versus Boston. Um,
Definitely.
so going into this, we kind of see like Optic and Boston have kind of been back and forth this year, um, against each other, and this is the first time that we get to see Kremp in the lineup against Optic, versus having Vivid in. I'll touch on that for a second. What do you think about this Kremp move? Do you think it was right?
So I actually had been in contact with him while he was still down in challengers, and like just reaching out to him and stuff, and like congratulating him on performances and whatnot. And when I saw that he got called up, I mean, I definitely think from a performance standpoint, he very much was worthy of it. But it's less about was he worthy to be called up versus what did Vivid do to get dropped? Because I didn't think Vivid was playing bad. I didn't think the team was playing bad, um, and it just felt kind of random.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
and
wasn't
I mean,
expecting it.
right, and I wasn't either by any means. And you know, obviously, as you see here, from an individual performance standpoint, there's nothing negative to take away from Kremp. I mean, he's got a lot of confidence. He plays fast paced. He's able to slay out on the SMG. He led the team in kills in this series, and overall, Optic got outslayed in this. I mean,
By
Boston was the better team from a slaying standpoint by far in this series.
yeah.
Um, but yet, and normally, traditionally, we'd expect Optic to get slammed, knowing that, because usually they're not beating teams off of objective prowess or anything like that. And it just goes to show the difference that I don't know if it's the coaching with JP Krez or with having Ghosty, who they call like a human UAV type of player. I don't know what it is, but they were able to take a performance where literally everyone was red except for Dashy, and they were able to, win. The first hard point was pretty dominant up until the end. Boston kind of made it close. S&D wasn't close. The control was close, even though they lost it. And then the next hard point wasn't as close as the original one. But like, if you had just showed the stat line and didn't show the match score, 9 out of 10 fans that didn't watch this match probably would have been like, "Oh yeah, Boston won that," and probably would
Yeah.
have been like they won it 3-0 or something like that.
Yeah. 3-0,
So to see
3-1 at least.
So to see Optic come out on top 3-1 despite a strong debut from Kremp, uh, and just a strong slaying day from Boston in general was very surprising.
I think this Boston team like got worse like with every roster move, honestly. Um they had quick success with Beans, but then like after that, obviously they kind of start to fizzle out. And I don't think this was the right move. I feel like this is a situation that we were just talking about. I feel like if Vivid stayed on this team, they were looking really good. And I feel like if they were able to stick it together and work on what was going wrong, that they'd be able to iron it out, or at least try to iron it out, and have a better chance in trying to bring someone new in. Because we saw Beans have like a huge major when they first picked him up. So
Right.
it's hard to get that consistently, especially from someone that's new. Because Beans has been honestly pretty decent, but he was like astronomical with, when he first came in. So obviously you're not going to get that from anyone in the league every single series, every single game. So this Kremp move was kind of out of place, but I was kind of trying to hear it out. But so far from what we've seen, I don't think it's working out. And I feel like this team is going to be a victim of starting off pretty decent and then falling short towards the end of the year, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate because that's not what you're looking for. So,
You know, they, the problem is Methods. Obviously, that situation was unexpected. He decided to retire, um, And the problem was, as soon as that happens, you kind of lost that true veteran leadership. And, like, all you really had for a veteran was, I guess, Vivid or Awakening.
Yeah.
And even they're, like, newer guys. Like, I'm pretty sure Awakening came up during MW19.
I think so.
So, like, those are your veterans compared to a team like Optic, who's got guys like, Dashy, Hook, Shotzi, who have all been competing for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Or I guess not Shotzi, he's only been MW19, but Hook and Dashy at least. It just, like they kind of lack veteran presence, and when they get down in a series, like who's gonna be the one to rally the troops and be like, get everyone's mental back in check. I'll give Boston credit. I think the one cool thing that they have done with their roster moves is they've kept it in the family, in the sense of they have an academy team and they believe in the development that they're putting into their academy roster, so that when they feel like they need to make a roster change, they're not looking in a bunch of different directions. They're bringing these players up that they already have signed under contract. So they're making use of an academy team the best way possible, I'd say. Like, LAG obviously basically brought up their entire academy team this year, but that was, I don't know, I feel like that was more of a, like,
a desperate move almost.
Yeah, desperate, and you're not going to see that many people get called up all at once. Like, that was just a weird situation. Whereas with Boston, it's obviously been gradual. I'd like to see more teams have a system like this in place.
Me too.
I'm not saying they're necessarily using it correctly in terms of when they're bringing people up, but just the fact that you have that much faith in the talent you're developing, and then you bring them up when you want to make a roster change. It's very reminiscent of traditional sports when they have minor league teams and minor league affiliates. You're developing your own talent, and then you have a good farm system, if you will. So I will give Boston credit for that, but other than that, the fact that they lost this match 3-1 is just baffling, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to Optic's like hardpoint presence and search and destroy presence, because this is kind of a series that we'll probably see out of Optic a lot, which we actually already have been seeing out of Optic a lot, is 3-1s where they lose the control. Yeah. And you can see like how well that breached it in the control. So and it was still close. One of the best
control teams all year.
Yeah.
Even with all the roster changes, I feel like Breach
has true.
Consistently been a control team.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, is a good thing if you're able to win map 1 or 2. But when you have a team like Optic right now, who they've basically said like, yeah, if we lose control, whatever, because we feel like we're one of the best teams at hardpoint. We're one of the best teams at search. We're going to win maps 1 and 2. And even if we don't, we're going to recover, because after the control, it's another hardpoint and another search. Like, they've basically said, we're going to lock down 4 out of 5 maps within a series, and you can have the one.
Yep, and that's why they're probably the favorites right now. And then this one was super surprising, Surge versus FaZe. I think we both had picked Surge on this.
Yep.
But I wasn't expecting a 3-0 by any means. But
I was gonna say, yep,
once this happened, once FaZe got 3-0'd here, I'm starting to lose faith in FaZe. So this kind of just comes off of a big series from just their 2 stars, Pred and Sib. And then Mac, you see kind of doing the same numbers as Sib, but
I just want to say, I think I'm going to claim credit for this victory for Surge, because I want to say the day of this match, or maybe the day before this match, was when I put out my analysis, basically saying that, like, Mac, I think it was literally titled "Mac Makes the Difference," and I was just talking about how, like, when Seattle is able to get him involved and put him in positions to, like, play a role in each match, they're a completely different team
every time
than when it's just Pred and Sib running around the map and everyone and the other 2 are just kind of like there.
Yeah.
And
Every
he showed
time.
it. I mean, he went out. He had a great match against a top team. And I mean, Abizi, like we said, he's MVP caliber, probably the MVP favorite, but even he couldn't stop this from. You can't do anything about that right there.
Yeah,
again,
that's the
you
problem.
cannot. There is nothing you can do about a teammate going 8-25.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a pretty long search. I mean, FaZe still got 175 points, so for Slasher to not hit double digits, it's like it's hard to even really talk about like what's going on because you can kind of just see what's going on. It doesn't even matter about impact or not impact because at the very least you got to be winning gunfights to some degree to have any impact at all. So their respawns have been honestly pretty bad, and that's something that we're not used to at all with just FaZe in general. And I think it's really coming off of Slasher. I mean, I made a team of the week or a stock up and down team of the week, and Slasher was on my down and accuracy was on my up. And a lot of people for Seattle have Mac as their X factor, and you said it perfectly. Every time he's involved and he's playing well and being impactful, Surge will do good. But no one really expected accuracy to come out this stage and be like a super monster of a player. So then you're like,
No, for sure.
holy, like if accuracy can be this good, and then you still have Mac who can be this good, like we see in this series. They're a serious contender in my eyes. Seattle looks really, really good at this point. They take down, the most successful CDL team so far in FaZe. Even in Search, where you think FaZe still probably at this point has like an advantage, the Surge comes out and still beats them anyways. The control wasn't close at all. Pred went super, super crazy in the control, goes 24-12. This control was like 6 minutes long. I don't know if you got to watch it, but it was like this series was over fast.
Sid did not do good at all.
Oh, yeah.
And they still just smacked him. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I think like crediting accuracy is huge here because again, you look at the overall stat line for the series of .86 and casual fan might look at that and be like, why does he have a roster spot? Like everyone else is positive, performing well, and like that they don't need. That's exactly what they need out of him. If he can maintain .86 to .92, we all know and hear all the time about what he provides for this team outside of like slaying. Like his ability to make call outs for rotations and all that stuff that doesn't show up on the scorecard, like that's what he's there for. That's his role, and he does it very well for the most part.
Yeah, and on a CeeLo control, just like right next to Sib, accuracy has like a similar stat line, but I think that's just like kind of how a CeeLo works. Your AR players are kind of just outside holding angles, and when your sub players are just mowing down the enemy team and it's a quick 3-0, it's like they didn't even really have a chance to get kills because FaZe was just avoiding the head glitches that their AR players were holding, and they were chowing inside, but inside they were running into Mac and Pred, who was just kind of doing whatever they wanted to. So, I mean, they have a .44 and a .59, but their job was to hold down the outside lanes, and they held down their outside lanes and allowed their sub players to do what they had to do, and it was a quick 3-0. And I think it just speaks to, FaZe's woes and Surge's highs right now.
Exactly.
Oh, whoops. Okay. And then we got 3 more. We won't skip this one, but we'll make this one fast because it wasn't necessarily interesting. Gorillas look like they're 0-5. Surge look like a top 3 team right now in my eyes. Somehow closer than the FaZe series as far as the control goes. Hardpoint and Search were pretty similar, but you see here only one positive player, but everyone else on the team is just making impact kills, and that is just the teamwork difference between a team that has been together for multiple years versus a team who has been together for a few months. So
well, and again, like LAG, it was the same deal. They were up. I don't know if this was a reverse sweep in the control again, but clearly LAG is somewhat decent at control. That might be the only mode they're somewhat good at because they pushed Optic and Surge to round 5 control,
Yeah.
both on LSILO or LSILO. But again, it's obvious who's the better team, who's the worst team. Uh, that's really all you can really say about that
Yeah.
series.
It's like a top 3 team versus the bottom 3 team, and that's another situation right here. Maybe not bottom 3, but like probably bottom 4. Rocker
Yeah.
versus Thieves. Thieves look really, really good. Their hard point looks incredible, although Hero is very close. They've been on a serious run on a hard point. Just
Say,
in
other than
respawns
hard
in
point,
general, but you see that Search and Destroy is kind of the Thieves' only game mode that's been like average, but here they're able to pretty much sweep Rocker
yeah.
6-1. So yeah, Rocker's fighting for a champ spot, and they are tied right now with Vegas. So every match going forward is really, really crucial. But the problem is, in my eyes, Rocker looks like a bottom 4 team, I think, honestly. And I think Vegas is like 3, 4, 5 spots ahead of them, like in a ranking. So
Yeah.
I would be surprised at this point if Vegas doesn't make champs and Rocker does, especially with this Fame pickup. I guess I'll ask you about that. I kind of like the exact same situation with Boston. I wasn't expecting this, and I feel like it made their team worse, honestly. In my eyes, I think they needed a change, or maybe they. I mean, to be honest, like the real problem is like you have an all-star player in Afro who's supposed to be like a Hydra, like a Pred, who's supposed to be not necessarily at their level, but supposed to be the consistent Slayer. And honestly, for the past few months, he has been like underwhelming. So this team without Afro being really big in the respawns isn't going to do well in general. But to drop Attach was surprising to me because I thought Attach was doing his role, not necessarily excelling, but I don't think he was like being a detriment by any means.
No, I mean, I actually got word of this roster change before everyone else. I was going to release it a day before it actually ended up coming out,
Really?
but in respect to Rocker and like I don't have any direct lines of communication with them currently. Otherwise, I would have reached out to them, been like, "Hey, I caught word of this. I plan on putting it out there. Can you like confirm or deny it or whatever?" Because I wouldn't want to just put it out there and then they're like scrambling to make the announcement themselves. I wouldn't want to put them in a tough spot, especially with such a high profile player.
Mm-hmm.
But I sat on it. I think the rotation ended up breaking the news on this one first. But when I got told of this roster change, I mean, I was like, first it was just Rockers going to be making a roster change, and that was just expected because of how bad they did Stage 3 and Major 3.
Yeah.
We all thought, okay, they're going to make some sort of move. And when I heard, I was like, there's the one guy that's untouchable aside from Afro because he's like their superstar, so to speak, is attached. Like, there's no way that they're gonna mess with him. And when I found out that they bench him, and not only is it they benched Attach, who's running AR, but they replace him with a guy from their academy team. I'll give props, but a guy that's been running sub in challengers, and they replace him to come play AR. I don't understand. Like if you're gonna replace Attach, bring up Pander or one of the I think it's God RX maybe is the
Yeah.
other one running
Yeah. He's on there
AR
too.
on that. Like bring up an AR. like
Yeah.
I don't. It's just a really you're putting Fame in a bad spot because he hasn't been running AR all year. Now he's playing with a whole new group of guys that are already like struggling, and there's got to be desperation because their chances of making champs have just been decreasing as Vegas has continued to get better. Um, Overall, weird roster change that just didn't make sense to me considering the struggles they've been having. Uh, and that's really, I mean, that's really all there is to say here. Thieves by far the better team, and other than that, Hardpoint, I mean, basically pulled off the DoorDash challenge here with the 6-1 and the 3-0.
Yep.
So
And it's really unfortunate with this Rocket team because Afro, like on Ravens, like going into this year, I was like, wow, this team can actually potentially be like really, really good. Afro was obviously like an all-star on that Ravens team pretty much his entire time from Cold War forward. Cammy Cold War was like actually an MVP consideration. Stage 1 and 2 Bance was like the best Bance we've seen in like a very long time. And then Attach was doing exactly what he had to, not necessarily excelling, but not all 4 players can. So to see them fall off and then make a roster move in desperation, and I think it's going to hurt them in the long run anyways, it's unfortunate, but it's just the way, again, that it goes. 3-0 for Thieves, and I don't think it was a surprise. Thieves look really good right now. Rocker look pretty bad. They bring in a new guy. They bring in a new player in Fame, and like Pascal just mentioned, it wasn't exactly a perfect fit. And I think it shows here, and it showed in their previous matches how they've lost the last 3 in a row. And the only 2 that they won was on LAN. And then last match, this was also another interesting one that was an outcome that I expected, but not in the fashion that I expected by any means, especially with now looking at the way that it went down. It was a close series. Overall, I had subliners winning this one, and the only reason that I really had them winning this one, because I thought subliners had been looking better recently, obviously beating FaZe. They were 3-1 going into this, but Boston, this crimp move, honestly, like, didn't make much sense to me, although you could see that pretty much all players in the lobby did good this series. It was just a super close series that went in the way of subliners. But I don't know. I feel like just the roster move that Boston made wasn't sitting with me right, so that's why I took subliners. And we kind of saw that this Hotel Hardpoint was a pretty close series, 250 to 183, and you see Skies here going 26 and 18. Skies has been looking really good just in general recently, which I think is really important because he's like their second like star. I mean, Kismet can also pick up that role, but we've seen it from Skies for multiple years now. Where Kismet, he's only been in the league since. He's been like on and off challengers like pro like for a very long time, but he finally found a spot in New York last year where we saw him do really well. But Skies we've seen in the CDL doing really well pretty much every year. And he was struggling, so he kind of brought it back this stage. Well, he definitely brought it back this stage, and it showed on the Hotel. Priesta does exactly what you mentioned earlier, what he needs to do, and you get, of course, a solid performance from Hydra every single game, and similar, slaying, but it just comes down to the teamwork, and it just didn't work out in the favor of Boston in the end. I don't know if you had a chance to watch this one, but did you get a chance to watch this game?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay, so I was gonna say, you were able to see how all the it was like, I don't even know like how to explain it, but it was like every single time you thought Boston was gonna come back into it, they just like didn't.
They had in the control. They had that situation where it was like 11-3 in lives, and
yeah,
they ended up letting New York get the
squad wipe.
Like, was it like New York got like on a roll and was able to get all the kills? They were able to get the 4 down and then cap the point.
Yeah. Like, every time you thought Boston was going to come back into it, they didn't. All 3 maps.
I mean, very similar to the Optic series here. Boston outslayed in the, head-to-head, and then they still lost.
Yeah.
I don't know what is going on with their ability to play objectively correctly in really all 3 modes. Control is usually their best, but even that, they had that big blunder. I don't know who, like, the problem for Boston is, I don't know who is the Like, I don't know who plays the ghosty role. I don't know who the IGL is. Um, and I think people underestimate just how important that is to have on. I mean, any esports team, but especially Call of Duty. People think, oh, it's a faster FPS game. You don't really need it, but like having that one person who's like calling out the different situations, calling the rotations, calling the timings of when to, check bomb versus when to, stack the point, like all those different scenarios in objective based play. I don't know who's in charge of it for Boston,
I'm
and
not sure.
clearly they are lacking in that department. Because the slaying is not an issue. They outslayed New York. They kept Hydra. They kept Hydra to a .9, which for his standards is probably a lot
Terrible.
lower than we expect.
Yeah.
Uh, and Kismet to a .79. Um,
To lose 3-0.
right, to lose 3-0. It's just again, it's another one of those ones where you don't show, if you don't show the scoreboard of maps or whatever, and you just showed the overall series stats, 9 out of 10 people are probably saying, "Oh, Boston probably won that." But
Yeah.
it's just ever since the roster change, it seems like their slaying has definitely gotten better, which is never a bad thing. But there is a clear deficit in their ability to play objectively.
I feel like Kremp and Vivid played like a really similar role. Like they're both like really aggressive sub players. Um, but I think all you really did was like you didn't necessarily gain any more skill. Like you already had that type of player. You just like kind of threw a wrench into things. Like where you had a solid four that has seen, a top four placement, has been together for the whole year, and then you kind of just replace Vivid with a similar player who isn't necessarily going to like take over and just push Boston to all of a sudden like a top two team. But now you have a new voice that they're not used to. Beans is obviously used to Kremp, but Awakening and Nero not so much. So I think this Boston team is kind of on the tightrope, and I think they're kind of falling down. Um, because for them to outslay and then lose by this much also speaks to subliners and their teamwork. And we saw that in Major 1, how good that they are. I mean, this team is really a smart team. Like, Kismet has been playing in challengers for so long. I remember seeing Kismet even like during like World War II, probably even Cause before that at like a top level. Hydra has been like a super smart submachine gun player. Obviously, he's an MVP caliber player the past few years now. And then Skies and Priesta have also been, I think, just smart Call of Duty players. So that's probably why they're able to get wins like this where they don't necessarily have the kills, because they're able to have certain setups and certain breaks and certain strats on search and destroy that just work for them. Like you mentioned, 3 versus 11. It looked like Boston was about to win that round, and then New York gets 3 or 4 kills in like 2 seconds or 1 second, stack the hill, and it was over. And those are the type of plays that Boston are missing, just where they 3-2-1, or they make sure they have everything watched. They make their entry kills, and then they pivot and they go to the objective, whether it be the hard point or the rotation or the control hill. So I think that's just kind of the difference between these two teams. A few months back, I think Boston would have beat Subliners, but at this point,
pretty sure at this point they're 0-5 against them now all time.
Yeah, which
is as a when it comes to regular sports, as a Boston sports fan, breaks my heart to see them struggle against New York so much.
I know. I wonder if that rivalry will like become a thing. Honestly, I don't know if it will or not, to be honest, because I feel like
it's all gonna come down to their because you're not gonna, obviously it's not like you're gonna have a situation where like the Yankees go to Fenway Park or something like
depends on the marketing.
It's all gonna come down to how they treat it on socials. I feel like at times they've kind of hyped it up and played that angle.
They should.
But then there's also been times where they haven't.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart, yeah, because Boston's got a very passionate fan base. I think New York's got a passionate fan base.
Yeah, we saw that in both majors they were sold
Right.
out. I mean, the one that I went to in Boston was like super loud. I don't have a reference because
Right.
I've never been to another event, but I mean, it was sold out like super, like really in advance. It was like negative
No, it was quick. I was
degrees.
looking at tickets like right when they went on sale, and they were already like sold out. I was
It
like,
was a
oh my
pretty
god.
big venue. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you even know this, but like a bunch of Celtics players went there. Jason Tatum was
Yeah.
there. Jalen
Tate
Brown.
and
Um,
Grant Williams, I think, was
yeah,
there.
Grant Williams was there. Hassan Whiteside, obviously not on the Celtics, but he was there.
That's sick.
Um, yeah, it was cool just to see like them support their city and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like earlier, like stage 2 and 3, I feel like Boston looked like a better team than Subliners. But at this point, I feel like Boston's been on a decrease where Subliners are coming up on an increase, and just like that, they win 3-0. So those were the matches from last week, and that's going to wrap up the qualifiers, and it's going to put us into the major that starts on Thursday in Columbus. We'll do a bracket. We'll do it, and then we'll check out. Or I'm sorry, we'll do this championship pie. I'll show you what I've got working on here, and then we'll do a bracket, and then we'll hit those last two segments, and then we'll wrap this up. So this is what I call. You can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. So I don't know if you've seen this before. I made one previously. It's Rick's Championship Pie. These are. I'm going to list all 12 teams here, and I'm just going to show you the percentage that I give them to win the tournament, given the bracket and whatnot, and the way that things can pan out. These are the chances that I give the teams, and we'll go in order. So starting off with the first team, the Ravens. I was gonna put a few teams at 0, but after what happened with Gorillas last year, I felt it was only fair that no one's really ever at 0. They are going to the event, so you always have some sort of chance. But yeah, 0-4 or 1-4. They haven't looked good at all. They haven't even really looked competitive at all. Obviously, they won the Vegas series, but all the other series were pretty much blowouts. So I give them 1%. I don't know what you think. Is that fair?
No, I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, because we get a few of them here. Mutineers
Yeah.
also 1%, arguably worse than Ravens right now, especially with their situation. And I think it's kind of the similar story. They have just 0-5 in the stage. Not that many close series. So I also give them 1%.
Yep. I mean, I think all of these teams.
Gorillas,
Like
again,
you said, they're
1%.
there, so you got to give them a percentage. But
Yeah.
that's about it.
I mean, even the Gorillas team that won last year during Vanguard, they didn't necessarily look as bad as these teams look right now, but they weren't good necessarily, and they had a last minute sub. So like with those situations, they did not. I mean, people probably had them at 1%, especially when they had a last minute sub.
Right.
So for them to come out and win, you never know. So I mean,
Exactly.
Gorillas 0-5 in the stage. Obviously, we already talked about them enough. So I give them 1%, and then our last and final 1% team, I give it to the Rocker, especially with the way that the bracket is panning out. They lost 6 matches in a row last stage. They are 2-5. Their only 2 wins are against teams that are also at 1% and on LAN and with the home crowd. So, and with a warm up for the second match. So, I mean, Rocker just hasn't really looked good at all. They take FaZe to a game 5, which is fair. But FaZe has not even necessarily looked like a top team recently. So, take that as it is.
Not to mention their winners round 1 matchup is against a team, the Thieves, who they're 0-4 against and 0-12 in map count.
Yeah, so they're going to get knocked down, and then, well, they absolutely should get knocked down right away, and then I have pretty much no faith in them going from losers round 1
maybe
to
losers
champs.
round 1.
Yeah, because they would play Ravens, right?
They play London, yeah.
Yeah, so they might win that, but then after that, I think they play like FaZe or I don't even know who gets knocked down, but we'll look at that. Anyways, there's just no way that these guys win, so I'm gonna give them 1%. Unfortunately, I think I give Boston 4% here. Playing against Optic look like the favorites. They look like the best team in the league right now. like I said, I feel like they're kind of on a downward spiral, and I feel like with the recent series that they just had, it's going to be tough for them to bounce back, especially with the roster move. So for those reasons, I'm gonna give them 4%. I feel like it's fair. If there was 25 tournaments, I think they could win one. So especially with the teams that are above them. So that's where I have Boston in 5th place right now, or 5th to last, I guess. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think of all the because the 4 teams obviously at the bottom, 3 of those are all losers bracket teams.
Yeah.
Boston is the winners bracket team, but they
They have a tough bracket. And
the fact that again they play Optic, and if they lose they play Ultra, who yes they've looked bad this stage, but
can't
they
count them
did
out.
just win a major. You can't count them out. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. If the bracket was a little bit different, maybe, but didn't Boston start off like 2-0 and then lost the last 3? I'd have to check, but I think so.
Something like that, yeah.
Or
they beat Toronto, and they
they lost to Vegas the first game, right?
I think you're right.
So maybe
right
I think they were 2-1 and then lost the last 2. But regardless, just kind of what we've seen recently out of them and the bracket, that's what I'm gonna give them. Ultra, I'm also gonna give 4% to. I just think starting losers round 1 is almost an impossible task, and with how much talent there is, they're pretty much going to have to go through. Well, they are going to have to go through everybody. I mean, if you think about it, Boston's going to be their easiest matchup if they get it. So they're going to have to beat every top team in order to actually win. But I mean, everyone else in the losers bracket has 1% chance, but I think Ultra looks way better than these teams, even though they are 1-4. They were all pretty close series, so I still feel like 4% is fair for them being in losers. If it was any other team, they'd probably be at 1% right with everyone else.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think they're the one losers bracket team that they could make a little bit of a run, but like
unlikely.
Start from losers round 1 and go all the way. It's just we've literally only seen it once in the CDL.
And it was with like a new meta mid tournament, so you got to take that into account as well. So that's why I give them 4%. They're definitely not out, but they're definitely on their back heel. The next team, a pretty significant jump. I think this is fair. I feel like this league is really starting to separate itself. At the beginning of the year, it was really close, where now you see a lot of 3-0s, a lot of 3-1s, and it's for a reason. It's because some of these teams are separating themselves from the competition. But I give FaZe a 10% chance. I think that this is probably the lowest percent chance they've probably ever had going into a tournament. But the way that Slasher has been playing, it has been super detrimental to this team. It's been consistently detrimental. It wasn't like 1 bad series or 2 bad series. Even the series where they were winning, he wasn't even necessarily doing good. So in order for them to win this tournament, I feel like he's going to have to be extremely, he's going to have to be a whole new player. He's going to have to be someone that we've seen from Major 2. So I think it's unlikely, but I think a 10% chance is fair. I mean, you're still winning 1 out of 10 with a 10% chance.
Right. No, I mean, this is probably the worst they've looked going into a major.
Ever.
So it's a fair assessment for sure.
Ever. I also give Vegas a 10% chance. It hurts to not have them higher because I'm a big Vegas fan, but I think realistically, I can't put them past FaZe. Even if Slasher just does decent, FaZe is going to be a good team. And I think Vegas has a serious respawn problem. They're going to be forced to win a respawn. And I mean, that's just saying that they can consistently win search and destroys, because we have Optic, who looks really good at search, who Vegas's model won't necessarily work. Also, every team that Vegas beats, or pretty much every team that Vegas beat was down here, right? They beat
They beat,
They
yeah,
beat Ultra,
London,
Boston,
Florida.
Florida Gorillas.
I think so.
Yeah, so like they
It was
didn't they
something
played
like
no
that.
top teams. The only team that they played that was like a top team was Ultra, and they have been having recent struggles. So going 4-1 while being very impressive, it wasn't a full um, idea on the spectrum of teams that you could be playing against. Also, they just recently seen success. They are in the winners bracket, so this is definitely the best chance that they've had at winning a tournament ever. This is their first time in winners bracket, so I'm excited to see what they can do. But I feel like being tied with FaZe right now is fair because, to be honest, I think Vegas has probably looked better than FaZe. Although FaZe has a much higher ceiling, in my opinion. It's just if they can
Yeah.
get there versus if they
The,
can't.
yeah, I mean, the difference is Vegas right now is playing at their expected ceiling, I would say, versus FaZe is playing far from it.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Um, so yeah, I mean we're about a third of the way through the pie chart, and we're already 7 teams in, and you're gonna see why, because we're gonna start seeing some more jumps. I think subliners at 12%, fourth best chance. I think makes a lot of sense. They go 4-1. They beat some decent teams. They beat FaZe. They beat Boston. They look in shape. They look in form. We've seen them do it before, and I think with the way that Skies has been playing recently, that this New York squad has a serious chance, especially with the way that their bracket falls. They play Vegas round one,
Yep.
so I feel like that's like kind of like a toss up. However, if you put them up against someone like Surge or honestly Surge, Thieves, or Optic, I would definitely take those three versus New York. However, versus Vegas, they could potentially beat them. So,
Right. No,
um,
it's just that the thing that's hard about that initial winners round matchup between NYSL and Vegas is the winner more than likely will be going on to play Optic.
yeah, exactly.
So either way, whoever wins most likely is going to end up in losers immediately after that.
Yep. And honestly, I feel like we'd see probably more ice from New York
I
than
agree.
Vegas. So if there was to be a losers run, that's why I give them this small percent
Yeah.
chance. Also, they beat better caliber teams. I just think they look just a little bit better than Vegas right now.
Also have
Although,
MVP caliber player. I mean,
yeah, you have
that's
Hydra who you
something
can
that
always count on.
you don't necessarily have with Vegas. They're
Yeah,
playing really well together. Standy has had a good, you know,
I mean they lost to
initial run with
Ravens,
them, but yeah,
so that's the problem with Vegas is their floor is low, and their ceiling definitely isn't the highest in the league, but it is high enough where they could win. It's just that you're gonna have to play at your ceiling every single series, and also your opponents aren't gonna have to be playing at their ceiling, um, or else they're gonna lose. So we got 3 teams left, still more than half the pie chart. We see another jump here to Surge, 14%. In my eyes right now, they look like the third best team. They go 4-1, and the way that their bracket is set up, I feel like they are in a pretty decent shape in my eyes to get to like winners finals. I either them or Thieves really. So I think they have a 14% chance. I think that's fair because while I think Optic is probably the heavy favorite, I still think Surge has a serious chance at winning this tournament.
yeah. I mean, it comes down to can they play like the team they did those last couple matches of this stage, where, like we said, everyone's doing their job. Pred and Sib handling the slaying, uh, accuracy doing what we know he's gonna do, and then Mac filling in his role as well,
Yep.
like he did in the Phase series.
Yeah, and I think you kind of at this point you have two X factors, accuracy and Mac. You just need one of them to like be exceptional in any given map, and it's gonna give Surge a serious chance at winning. Where before it was probably just Mac, but we've seen how good accuracy can be in this game, yeah, as of recent. So if he can keep it up, then yeah, if Surge won this tournament, I would be surprised, but not completely surprised, because I think right now in my eyes they look like the third best team.
Yep.
Leaving only two more who no one should really be surprised about. I give it to the Thieves, a 15% chance. I do think they look a little bit better than Surge versus other teams, if that makes sense. Like LA versus New York, LA versus um, Vegas, LA versus FaZe. I think they are like a pretty heavy favorite. Where I feel like Surge could possibly fall to those teams. Um, and just the way that the hard points have been looking on the Thieves, it's definitely undeniable. They really only lost hard points to Optic, who are favorites. And it's really going to come down to these two teams in my eyes. Either, you know, these are probably the top three: Optic, Surge, and LA Thieves. I don't know about you, but I think that's
No.
a likely outcome.
Yeah.
Um, I think against Optic, though, I think LA has a little bit of a better chance to beat them than Surge does, in my
I
eyes, because
agree.
we've seen it before. So if it
Hmm.
came down to the finals, then I think they have a smaller chance. Although I still think Optic has the best chance,
Yep.
um, and that gives Optic a 27% chance at winning. Although it seems far larger than the other teams, if you really look at the whole picture, you're saying that they're going to win 1 out of 4 times, and I think that's fair. I feel like any favorite going into a tournament probably has at least a 20% chance, although Optic at this point look like a heavy favorite. So I think
I mean,
27% is fair.
I think the biggest thing for Optic, aside from the fact that they look like the best going into the major, is they also have arguably the most favorable path to
Oh, yeah, definitely.
the at least to the winners finals, because it would be beating Boston, who's struggling, and then beating Vegas or NYSL.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and as we've seen this year, all three major winners so far have come from winners bracket. Even though people like to make the argument that coming out of winners isn't an advantage because you go all championship Sunday, you're not playing, you're iced. But
Yeah.
when these teams are making these deep runs through the losers bracket, like Thieves did, like Optic did, eventually you run out of gas. I mean, there's a lot of matches in one day, and even if you have quote unquote momentum, eventually like fatigue kicks in, and the winner bracket team seems to, or the winners bracket final, the one that advances from that seems to always they've won the three majors. So I think Optic has the most favorable path through it to get to the grand finals out of winners, and I think history repeats itself in that sense that whoever comes from winners finals is gonna win the major.
Yeah. Shotzi, Dashi, Kook all look like top 5, 6 players right now.
Yep.
So there's no denying that they're the favorites. I think I even saw Nameless tweet out, and I thought about it, and I agree with him now that this looks like the heaviest favorite that we've seen out of anyone since FaZe and Cold War.
He's right.
Because last year it was like such a toss up, and it was like so mixy. You like really didn't know. Like FaZe was always like a favorite, but it wasn't necessarily like this where it just seems like you put Optic against any of these 11 teams, and you're going to expect probably a 3-0 or 3-1 just because of how strong their hard
It's
points and
the
searches are.
yeah.
It's just like, yeah, they might lose the control, but we've even seen them still winning, like not necessarily like a lot, but they are still super competitive in control. So that's still going to be not free for anyone. So
Exactly.
they're just looking really good. And
Right.
I don't know what you think. Would you switch anyone around? Would you change any
No,
percentages?
I mean, I would agree with it. I think your top three is correct. I think the number one is definitely correct. Just again, considering the path they have,
Yeah.
um, and like I agree with Ultra being ahead of Boston, being ahead of some of those other teams. Even though they're starting losers one, um, and then FaZe. I mean, we're just going off of not historically. We're going off of what we've seen the stage, and it hasn't been good. I mean, 10% still good, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't change it. But
Yeah.
I actually got to cut out here. Um,
No, you're good.
I'm I'm gonna have to dip out after this segment. So
No worries, man. I know we
I
went a little bit over,
yeah,
especially going over like the matches from last week. But I just want to get this with you.
yeah, for sure.
So thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, no, I
Let
appreciate it.
let them know, like what you got going on, where they can follow you, and
Yeah,
then that way they can be sent over to you.
sure. Yeah, I mean, you can check me out on Twitter, YouTube, Kick. All of it's gonna be Piscaro DB. Instagram, it's at Drew Piscaro. But I'm mainly active on Twitter, YouTube, and then I stream on Kick on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I got a little surprise that'll be announced tomorrow. I don't know when this is gonna air, but there's a
It's gonna
surprise
go
coming out.
tomorrow. So
Okay, so at 3
today.
p.m. tomorrow there will be an announcement. You'll want to check out my YouTube channel this weekend. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, but yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It was really great.
Yeah,
I
man,
definitely
dude.
want to do this again in the future.
Yeah,
If the opportunity presents itself. But I appreciate you.
yeah. We'll collab some
And
more.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. Thanks for hopping on. We'll get some games in at some point. I'm down to do some
Oh yeah,
streams with you. But yeah, thanks for hopping on, man. I don't know
of
exactly
course.
like how you can leave this call. I'm pretty sure you can just leave, right?
There's a on the Streamlabs thing. There's a thing that says leave.
Okay. All right. Perfect, man.
All right.
I'm gonna do my bracket, and then I'll be sure to let you know when this goes live, and we'll
Sounds
take it from
good.
there. All right. Stay in touch, bro.
Yep. Appreciate it.
All right. Peace out, man. All right. So yeah, Pescaro has to go. No worries. That gives us some time just to wrap this up quickly. So, bam. We're gonna do our bracket predictions for the tournament. We're gonna go through this quickly. I think Optic versus Breach is a 3-1. I'm gonna take Vegas here, 3-2. Give them the advantage in the search and destroy if it goes to game 5. I feel like Thieves is gonna win this 3-0. FaZe versus Surge. Honestly, I can't lie right now. I mean, we just saw them 3-0 them, so I think 3-1 is fair for Surge, which would mean FaZe and loses round 1, which we haven't seen, I think, ever. Breach versus Ultra. I feel like after losing this Optic match, after losing their recent matches, it's going to be tough for Breach to bounce back. And I think Ultra's going to come out. Even though they did go 1-4, they had a lot of close series. And we can't forget how good Ultra just was just a month ago. And then Subliners versus Mutineers, probably a 3-1. Maybe Mutineers can pull off a search and destroy win. I'm going to give this one to Ravens. Honestly, I have no hope in Rocker at this point. I don't really have any hope in London either. But no matter what happens here, they're going to lose this match regardless against FaZe. But I think London might win this 3-1. I feel like they look like a better respawn team. And then we have FaZe versus Gorillas, probably a 3-0 or maybe a 3-1. Considering, the way that FaZe has looked in past, I probably would have put 3-0, but FaZe hasn't necessarily been S tier. So we'll put them at 3-1. Again, I don't see this happening. FaZe will probably continue on. I feel like this will be the end of the run for Ultra. I feel like they'll probably just get one game in. But I do think it's going to be close. We can't necessarily count Toronto out, but I do give the edge here to Subliners. Winners round 2, Optic versus Vegas. I feel like they're going to win this 3-1. Maybe they lose. Honestly, I don't even know. I was going to say maybe they lose the control, but maybe they lose the search and destroy. These teams are similar where control is their weakest game mode. So, I mean, any of the first 3 maps, maybe Vegas steals 1. They have looked decent at the very least, so I don't think it's going to be a 3-0. And then this is the hardest one to predict, but I think it's a 3-1 for Surge. However, if it's a 3-1 for Thieves, I wouldn't be surprised. These guys just match up strangely. Two teams that weren't doing too well previously in the year who are now doing really well, at least with these qualifiers. So I give the edge to Surge. I just kind of looked at the way that these guys match up. However, the reason I gave Thieves a higher percentage to win in the championship pie is because I feel like Los Angeles matches up against Optic better than Surge does, but versus each other, I give Surge the heads up to. And then this match, I think, is the end for the subliners. I think it's going to be a 3-2 or maybe a 3-1. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3-1 there. And then Legion versus FaZe, I give this a 3-2. I see Legion winning both of the both of the search and destroys. And honestly, they've been competitive in control like this past weekend, so they won them both. But unfortunately, I think that's the end for the Legion. They probably get 3-1 here. These have looked really good in respawn. I don't think they're going to be able to compete necessarily in the respawns. Optic versus Surge, I have Optic winning that one for sure. They just look so good. Probably a 3-1, however. And then Surge versus Thieves again for the second time, and I think it's going to be the same outcome, except probably a little bit closer. Thieves will probably learn from their mistakes. Search and Destroy has been, the weaker of the game modes for Thieves, so I'll give the edge to Surge in 5, and that brings us to a grand finals of Optic versus Seattle, where I think it's going to be a 4-1 because it goes Hardpoint, Search and Destroy Control, Hardpoint, Search and Destroy, Control, Search and Destroy. Hardpoint, Search, Destroy, Control, Search and Destroy. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Optic wins Hardpoint Search, lose the Control, win Hardpoint Search. So 4-1 Optic. They will be your winners and predicting. So I will save this. Do I need to make changes? No, I do not. So that's going to be the end of the podcast for us. Thank you so much for joining in. I know this was a longer episode, but we did have a guest on, so we went a little bit more in depth. Make sure you follow Pescaro. Also, make sure you follow all of our socials, YouTube, Discord, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. All the links will be in the description. At Risk Factor Pod or Risk Factor Podcast on TikTok, I believe, is the only one that is different. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, an hour and 45 minutes in, drop a comment. Let me know that you like zebras, so I know that you watched the entire video. Follow the Twitter, most importantly, to stay up to date. We're going to be doing some predictions. We'll have some live chats going on in the Discord if you want to get involved with the community too. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Until next week, have fun watching the matches. We'll do a podcast once the weekend is over, and we'll review what's going on, and we'll look forward into a Major 5. So yeah, thank you, and peace out.